Good morning. Thanks, Steve. And if you look in the right corner, you can see this hotel. So anyway, I'm here to provide an update on IR activities and also to discuss WSIS, what it is in your future. And I'm going to do that by providing you an update from the Number Resource Organization on number of statistics since up to the 31st of March this year, recent policy activity in all the regional internet registries. Then I'm going to hone in and do some specific things about ARIN, some of our more recent statistics, and policy activity at our last public policy meeting in Orlando 4 weeks ago. And then lastly, a discussion about the World Summit on the Information Society. Actually, I'm just going to present some thoughts to you and hopefully get you to think a little bit more about this. So let's look at the Internet Number Resource Status Report as of the 31st of March 2005, prepared by the there are now 5 regional Internet registries, ARIN being formally recognized on the 8th of April of this year by ICANN in Mar del Plata. So, and this space is the IPv4 v8 address space. This is what people are continuing debating about how much is there and what's been used and so forth. As of the 31st of March, this is what it looked like. The 1/8 was obviously allocated after the 31st of March to ARIN. And these are the allocations since 1999 from the IRRs to their LIRs, ISPs. And the cum totals. And you can see between the 3 most senior IRRs that the pie is divided almost into equal thirds. The autonomous system number assignments from 1999 through 2005. And the cum total, as you can see, ARIN has better than 50% of the total number of AS numbers consumed. The IANA IPv6 allocations to the IRRs, this is a count of the number of /23s. There have been several allocations since the 31st of March, so this number is now different for sure. And the IPv6 allocations from the IRs to the LIRs, this is a count of allocations. It's not a count of network size, of address block size. And you can see by and large the largest consumption is occurring in Europe. And looking at it as a cumulative total, you can see that the RIPE NCC has well over 50% of the allocations. And if you look at it in the top 10 countries or economies, you'll see that the U.S. has 114 allocations, followed by Japan, and then several countries in Europe, and so forth down the line. This is the top 10. Some policy discussions. In all of the regions, there has been a discussion ongoing in regards to the size or the policy regarding the allocation of IPv6 space from the IANA to the IRRs. It has been discussed and acted on by the fora in APNIC and ARIN, and RIPE NCC is now finalizing their discussions on it. It'll be discussed by LACNIC at their meeting in Lima at the end of June. And in Africa, the topic was brought up at their first meeting in Maputo, Mozambique, 3 weeks ago, and will be acted on at their next meeting, which I believe is in November in Cairo of this year. This is the policy. It will be a global policy because once it reaches consensus through all the regional internet registries, it'll then go to the Address Council of the Address Supporting Organization and then be forwarded to the ICANN board for ratification. So given current timetables, the earliest that you could see this global policy being put into force would be probably sometime in the first quarter of 2006. There are several different IPv6 policy changes being discussed in 4 of the regions, and I'll highlight those in a moment. And the other matter that has a lot of concern and a lot of discussion is the privacy of who-is data. At the recent ARIN public policy meeting in Orlando, this received a very, very detailed discussion. And it's the first time that I'm aware of that there were actual representatives of governments present in an IRR public policy forum to discuss a policy. And in this case, there were representatives from the U.S. government in the form of the FBI, the Department of Justice, and the Federal Trade Commission, and then through remote participation, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police of Canada. And if you haven't been paying attention to this discussion that's been ongoing on the public policy mailing list of ARIN, please do so. And this policy will continue to be discussed, and will actually go through some more discussions on the mail list, and will be discussed even further at the next ARIN public policy meeting in October. Looking at IPv6 policy discussions, it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on, but there really is. Beginning at the ARIN meeting in Orlando, a IPv6 roundtable was brought into play. And if you recall, the current policies regarding the distribution of V6 address space was put into place about 2 years ago. And at the time, it was very clearly stated as this is our best guess, and this was the community saying this is our best guess about what we think should be done. And so we've now got several years worth of experience of doing this. And a couple of key aspects of that is the use of the HD ratio. There is currently a policy that has been proposed on the ARIN public policy mailing list to change the ratio number that's being used. It's been a ongoing discussion on both the ARIN and RIPE NCC regions about the use of the /48 as the default size to end sites. And in the ARIN region, there was introduced a discussion about allocating from the registry directly to end users. As you are aware, currently end users can only go directly to the registry and get provider-independent IPv4 space. They cannot get provider-independent IPv6 space. In the ARIN meeting, in the meeting room, when a consensus measure was taken by the chair of the meeting, the room was basically evenly divided. And so this discussion is currently ongoing, and so all 3 of these things can definitely affect the way you do business in the future. So if you're not participating in these discussions, you should really do so. You can expect these same discussions to occur in the other regions as time moves forward and moves into their next policy cycles. So here's some links to the IR statistics. Quick look now at ARIN statistics. As of the 15th of April, with the recognition of AFRINIC, this is what ARIN looks like today. U.S., Canada, and a set of islands in the Caribbean and in the Western Atlantic. And total membership at the time was 2,278. Looking at 2004, the Registration Services Help Desk was quite busy. Processing over 500,000 templates, receiving 374,000 emails, and processing and answering the phone a little over almost 17,000 times. So, and this is all being done, by the way, by 8 people. So I think we're getting good bang for the buck there. Looking at the activity comparing 2004 to 2003, the top table shows you the gross allocations of /8s by ARIN to its customers, AS numbers, and the IPv6 /32 allocations. And you can see it's about even between the 2 years. And in terms of new subscribers, people coming and getting address space from ARIN for the first time, in the V4 world, you can see that it still continues to be the small users are the preponderance of the people that become new users or new subscribers to ARIN. At the ARIN 15 public policy meeting, there were 5 proposals that were discussed. 2 were deferred. One, the directory services overhaul is what I was referring to in regards to the privacy discussions. And the other one that was deferred was the one I referred to in regards to the IPv6 assignments for Insights. 3 others were moved forward and will go into last call. And none were deemed to be abandoned. There was one policy decision that was taken by the ARIN Board of Trustees, which was to suspend that portion of the ARIN policies that pertained only to allocation of IPv4 space to Africa. With the formal recognition of AFRINIC, that policy is no longer germane and was suspended. There is currently a policy proposal now to move this portion of the policy to an historical status. So, having said that, and I'm going to do a little thunder stealing here because Susan likes to do this at the end. So, but the reason I'm doing it is that I mentioned several times you need to become involved in policy discussions. Well, one of the places you can do it is at an ARIN public policy meeting. Obviously, the best place to do it is on the public policy mailing list, but you should also, in October, come to Universal City, Hollywood, California. Right across the street, you will find NANOG 35 and ARIN 16. And one of the sponsors we've got so far is Equinix. And if any of the rest of you would like to step up the bandwagon, I'm sure that Susan Harris or Susan Hamlin from ARIN would be glad to talk to you. It's the 23rd through the 28th of October. And for more information, go to our respective websites. So, having said all that, now let's get political. And I know you guys are saying, yeah. You know, why do we want to discuss this Layer 9 stuff? I'm a Layer 3 kind of guy. What difference does it make to me? Well, it can really make a difference of your ability even to sit in this room and have the discussions that you're having over the next several days. So, what is it? It's a UN-created activity. And it's primarily created and being run by governments to discuss and define the actions for governance of the Internet. And it exists because there is concern in several quarters throughout the globe about the ad hoc nature of the governance of the Internet. And expected outcomes, so far 2 of them have already been done, and were done at the first summit meeting, which was concluded in December of 2003 in Geneva, which is a statement of principles and a plan of action. And now they are working on the implementation of that plan. And the expected outcome would be probably some sort of roadmap that would be published after the summit that will be concluded in Tunis in November of this year. So, there are currently there's 2 governance models. There's what we do today, which is community self-regulation, and that's where all those things that I just talked about, where we have people discussing things about sizes of IPv6 allocations and about privacy of who is data, all of those things. That's really being done today in a community self-regulated model. The people in this room participate in the discussions and come to a consensus about the way that ARIN should do its business, or in the other regions, the way the other respective IRR should do their business, and then the IRR does business in that manner. And actually, you have a similar thing going on with the way NANOG is being run, the whole reform movement, the actions of the program committee, and so forth. But it's the community that's deciding and determining what should be done. Proposed model is some sort of international governmental regulatory activity, and that has not been clearly defined. So, under the current model, NANOG and ARIN, they've evolved, and they provide community-based policy development, and they provide technical and engineering decisions and control. This whole discussion about keeping the mail list on topic is discussion about allowing the technical and engineering guys to really sit down and coordinate and do their business. Well, what can national governments do? Well, right now, you know that any national government, they can tax the Internet. And in fact, there are some taxes that float out there in different ways, shapes, and forms. They can limit public access to some Internet content, things such as pornography or political dissent. Other things such as spam. There was a recent case with the anti-spam law in the state of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia, I should know that. They can take actions to protect consumers from fraud, and they can regulate who has access to the internet. In short, government power can be used for good or it can be used for bad purposes. It can be used for good purposes to protect the users of the internet. It can be used for bad purposes to control and limit access to the internet. I'm just going to speak briefly about the U.S. Involvement today. Today, federal and state agencies prosecute internet crime. A lot of things that would be deemed as internet crime are actually criminal activity under current existing laws. There have been some laws that have been enacted to deal with other aspects of it. Intellectual property rights have been extended to the internet. The whole discussion about trademark issues with domain names and so forth, that whole property rights argument has been extended to the internet. And speaking inside the U.S., First Amendment protections do apply. Okay, what happens in community case policy development? This is really an ARIN type of a presentation, but as far as this particular slide goes, but you can easily apply this to the NANOG model as well. You have members direct activity. You participate. There's an open mail list. Open policy meetings, that's particular with the public policy meeting, but the fact that you had the community meeting last night and you're having another community meeting Tuesday and you have a separate reform list to discuss the way NANOG is going to be governed and operated is an example of an open policy mail list and meeting. Governing board is elected. You really don't have a governing board, but you do have a program committee that is active. Minutes and meetings are published. You do have proceedings that are published from the NANOG as well as public policy minutes from the ARIN meetings. And in the end, it's private. It's not governmental technical direction. So, why do some people want to change it? What's wrong with the current model? Well, some people say it's insufficiently controlled by governmental authority. It doesn't adequately permit international taxation and regulation. That is too capitalistic, is too private sector. And then the argument that a lot of people like to use is they allege that it insufficiently represents civil society. And that gets defined by the person that's using the word. But bottom line is what this is really about is power. What are the risks? Well, you can end up with a UN-based governance body where politically based decisions, not technology-based decisions occur. You could see the current bottom-up policy process being dismantled or made irrelevant. And you can see everything becoming responsive to politicians, not users. Which is why I made that earlier comment about you sitting in this room. If you become irrelevant, you won't come to a meeting like this. So, in your future, what about the ITU? Well, some people claim that the WSIS is the attempt by the ITU to take over control of the internet. Well, that's not really the case. It's really bigger than the ITU. In fact, there are a large number of people who are advocating change from the existing model that don't want the ITU involved either. They're looking at some other form of governance model to exist. So it's not just the ITU, so you can't sit there and wave the boogeyman that the ITU is the bad guy in this thing. Certainly they are an active player, and certainly they've got things that they want to do. For example, in the address space management area, there is a proposal that keeps on being reinvented and rephrased and restructured that says that there should be some sort of national allocation of IP address space the same way there is a telephone numbering plan, so that every country would have its fair share allocation of IPv6 addresses. Now, certainly fairness is an issue, and it should always be an issue, and it's something we should look out and pay attention to. And that's why your active participation in the policy process is most important. But is the allocation and a bunch of countries, probably the bigger countries, getting together and just figuring out how the pie is going to be divided up and that's the way it's going to be from now and forever, is that the answer There are some people that say yes it is, and there are a lot more people that say no it's not. And I think that most of you would say no it's not, but you need to make your voice heard. So, what can you do? Make your voice heard. Inside the U.S. and inside Canada and the rest of the countries in the ARIN region, and for that matter for countries outside the ARIN region, get to people in your government that are dealing with these issues. For those of you that work for companies that are sufficiently large to have policy-type organizations or lobbying-type organizations and so forth, find out who those guys are. Get to them. Tell them that this is an important thing. They have to pay attention to it. Participate in the mail list. Periodically, you'll see ARIN and the rest of the IRs make announcements about documents being put out for comment by the, for example, Working Group on Internet Governance. And there's a short comment period. Well, comment on those documents. Make a short statement, but do something. Don't rely upon everyone else in the room to do it for you. You're going to have to become an activist in this. So, unfortunately, this is one of those times where you're going to have to move from layer 3 to layer 9 if you want to be able to continue to do layer 3 in the future. So, with that, I'll say thank you very much.